All right. Welcome to the High Performance CEO podcast, where we discuss how to create a self-driven and highly profitable high performance organization. This is Patrick Rogers, your host. And today we have the privilege to have Steve Benson on the show. And Steve is the CEO of Badger Mapping. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, Patrick, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. So a little bit about Steve. Steve lives in Salt Lake. Started Badger Maps in 2012. Before that, Steve held various sales manager roles in companies you may have heard of, like Google, IBM, Autonomy. So definitely a solid resume of sales management experience. And Steve also hosts his own podcast called The Outside Sales Talk, and is also the president of the Sales Hall of Fame. So again, Steve, great to have you. You know, you have some significant experience that has led you obviously to where you are today. You're out there getting it done, hustling. Before we dive into the meat of your journey with Badger and all the good nuggets to share, I always like to have an icebreaker. What's one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
Not many people know about me. I feel like I'm always spilling my guts in interviews, and there's not a lot that's unknown. But I guess a lot of people don't know that I just became a father here in 2022. So
Awesome.
I now have a 9-month-old little girl.
Oh, congratulations. That's fantastic, man. I won't embarrass you by asking how old you are, but I'm on the total other side of the fence, man. My kids are I empty nested last year, and I'm going to live vicariously through you, brother.
And I through you.
Awesome, man. Well, those years it's just magical. So congratulations, man.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Yes, it is. Fun and sleepless nights. Are you about that? Are you at that stage right now, or how's she doing?
She sleeps pretty well, but we're teething now. So there's often a few. She probably only woke me up like 5 times in the middle of the night last night. So, so we're doing great.
That's awesome. Well, cool, man. So again, congrats. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your journey, right, at Badger Maps, and how you got to where your company is today.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I started Badger. My last role was at Google on the sales side, working with the Google Maps product line, and so I was coming across the problem that field salespeople have in the field of managing their customers, managing their territory, right, figuring out what their route is, that sort of thing. So I was very exposed to the problem just because people were coming to Google asking us to solve it, but Google makes the underlying mapping software. They don't make end to end. Sure. They don't do things like this, right? So I kind of saw the opportunity, and I knew a bunch of the people that would want it, and VPs of sales of field sales companies aren't hard to find, right? It's just field sales is real big in certain industries like pharmaceuticals, med device, construction, but really, everything that gets sold on Main Street often was delivered past the hands of a field salesperson to get to that final store. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was familiar with the problem and familiar with the people that had the problem, and I was also familiar with the building blocks that you would use to build a piece of software like this because of my time at Google working with the mapping stuff. And so sure, I was in a good position to kind of set out to solve the problem. And so that's kind of how we got into it. Now that's 11 years ago now, and we're like a 75-person company at this point. We've got offices in Europe and offices in Asia, and then the American divisions based in Salt Lake.
Oh, very cool, man. Congrats. So 75 people. Are you comfortable sharing about where your revenues are per year?
Yeah, we're doing 5.5 million in MRR. or I'm sorry, in ARR, and big difference there, just 12x.
Yeah.
So yeah, 5.5 million in ARR and growing like 30% a year. In 2022, we grew 30%.
Fantastic, man. So, what has been, and how long ago again, the company been around for?
11 years, and it's a
11 years.
bootstrapped company.
Okay.
We did a
Yeah.
small seed round real early on, and there was some founder money. I had my savings to put into it, but we never had professional investors in the business.
So again, congrats, man. It's awesome to talk to CEOs who working for the man in corporate America, saw a need, right? And actually had the balls to step out and do it.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It was definitely there's good things and bad things about leaving corporate America.
True.
Health insurance is great, salaries are great. And Google was certainly a very comfortable place to work. I mean, they've got obviously a fantastic business. So that definitely stepping out into the cold to try to build something, but it ended up working out this time.
Yeah, you bet. So when you think about and kind of look back, I always like to dive into what do you think were the the keys to your success as you were building your company. I mean, we all know CEOs, as we do that, there's just so many struggles. There's so many times that we hit walls and things like that, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. But what do you think were your keys to success in building Badger?
It's a good question. I mean, I think one of the most important things is picking the right direction early on. And I think that a lot of times when people start a company, they don't talk to the end users enough, the people that you think are going to purchase and actually pay for your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, well, and sometimes it's tricky because the people that purchase it are different from the people that are going to use it, right? And
Sure.
so
Right.
talking to both of those groups of people a lot more than you think you should, I think is a really valuable exercise, and having the sales background
Mm,
makes that easier, right? Because you can lean on your network to some degree, but if you make software for, I don't know, accountants in the pharmaceutical industry, your network's only going to take you so far. You need some sales skills to kick in the door and actually get people interested enough in what you're doing to jump on the phone and kind of chit chat with you about the space and what they need and where they hurt and what you could do to fix it should you build it. And doing that a
mhm,
lot really
mhm,
keeps the ship pointed in the right direction, because I think it's easy if you
mm.
don't do that to end up 5 degrees off of where you should have. But if you've been sailing 5 degrees in the wrong direction for a long enough
Every
time,
single time. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a big course correction, and a lot of the stuff you did was throwaway. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one big
Mm,
that was one big advantage of having the sales background. And of course, a lot of those people become your early customers, which is what allowed us to bootstrap. Was that we had a lot of people that were willing to pay for this, even in a pretty basic form early on. So knowing how to actually extract value from or give enough value to customers that you can extract revenue from them is early on for a product that's kind of wobbly, is an
sure. Yeah.
important skill. And software is always wobbly for 5 years or so. I mean, depending on how complex the problem is and how many engineers you have to throw at the problem, how funded it is. But we were pretty wobbly until 2017 or so. So about 5 years.
Gotcha. Yeah. So basically, the importance of keeping close contact with your market, continuing that market research, identifying what your value proposition is that you bring, not only in the beginning when you set up the company, but like you said, checking in on a routine basis to make sure your course correction is on, because things change, people change, industries change.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And hey, apologize. We didn't really kind of dive into what Badger Maps does, right?
Mhm.
if you would kind of share with the audience what the software does, the benefit, value, all that.
Yeah, sure. So Badger Maps is a product for people that work in the field. Primarily field salespeople is our ideal customer.
Yeah.
But people in a variety of field activities will use
Yeah.
us. Certain types of trucking operations or delivery
Sure.
operations, certain types of field service activities. But effectively what we do, let's just take the field salesperson because that's the most, the largest use case.
Sure.
Um, they will integrate with their CRM or wherever their data lives. You know, it could be a homegrown database, could be a
Yeah.
spreadsheets, who knows? But people, different companies keep their data all over, depending on the size and industry and things like that. But we connect to that customer data and we bring it into our environment where they can then work with their customer data in a map-based environment. And um, what a salesperson is able to do with that is kind of figure out who they should focus on given the constraints of where they physically are at. So this is for people that are actually going to a place. Maybe there's some kind of cadence at which they have to go to that place. Maybe it's just based on how important the customer is or how much perspective, projected value is going to be from that customer. But they have a lot of decisions to make about how they're spending their time.
Right.
What do they have to do? What do they want to do? Versus where are their opportunities in the future that they're trying to balance. And every salesperson has to do this and figure out kind of where am I going to spend my time? How am I going to spend my time? In what order? What's the schedule?
Best value of my time. Yeah.
Yeah. And that yields a schedule and a route. And, okay, so now that I have made these decisions, here's the route that I'm going to be taking this week. I'm going to go here to these 10 places on Monday and these 8 places on Tuesday. And so the goal is to get people organized, focus on their most important customers, give them a way to collect data in the field that goes back to their CRM. That's a pain point as well. A lot of CRMs are really set up to be working at a laptop as opposed for someone running around with an iPad or a phone.
Right.
So so mobilizing their technology, I guess, and bringing it to the field is often a big part of what we do, because it's a two-way integration, right? Real time. So if they gather information, it goes back to the CRM. If something new ends up in the CRM, it shows up in our system. And so really it's about enabling the field sales team with technology and helping this already mobile team get access to technology, mapping, routing, scheduling, being organized, decision making, stuff like that. So it's really a field sales tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know you and I had talked about it. The company that I was a district sales manager for, Ecolab, they're a big user of your product. And coming from someone where I spent 8 years in the field in sales before I became manager, a tool like that would have absolutely helped me. And back then, you're looking, if you're a motivated sales rep, you're looking for every inch you can get to have an edge, right? To be more efficient. And it definitely is a tool that I would have utilized if it was available for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's well, now it's available for the people that came after you over there.
That's right. Exactly. Very cool.
Yeah, it's funny when I talk to people that used to work in field sales, they're like, do you know how many hours I used to spend figuring out my route and figuring out who to focus on? I have to go out to this suburb at 2 p.m. tomorrow. What does that mean?
Yeah.
From that, in terms of how should I design the rest of my day? Oh, this guy just canceled, so I have an hour and a half before I have to drive 10 minutes over here. What should I do around here in the meantime? Is there someone are there prospects I can drop in on? The geographic intelligence for people that are actually out in the geography, out in the field is really valuable.
I mean, what a great product. The thing is when I first, when I first got into sales, we were using, was it Thomas guides?
Guides, yeah. I had them too. I had that in the Rolodex sitting in the passenger seat, driving around.
Exactly. We didn't even have, internet on phones back then. There was
no.
iPhone was 2007. So we were.
No, I would get lost and call my mom, and I would talk, and my mom would go on MapQuest on the computer and talk me through okay. And then you're going to come to, you want to go west on this until you hit this, then you go north. That's and you're going to hit this highway. I'm like, oh, okay. The kids today, cool. they don't know how good they have it.
Oh, it's crazy. Internet, man. It's awesome. Except if you're in an area in the country where there's no coverage, which I'm in this Southern Oregon. So there's a lot of times where I would still lose coverage, even, a few years back, but,
yeah, that's gotten better and better. And it's regional. It's this carrier really does a good job here, but no other carrier does. And then this carrier does a good job over here, but no one else does.
Totally. Totally. So, when we were talking about what, some of the topics to dive into, ask it, what's your authority, as a CEO, and kind of the real value that UVP that you bring, and as the CEO, and also specifically in sales. We talked about how to drive sales in companies, and some other things, we'll dive into. But, if you were a CEO up and coming, and you, or up and coming CEO looking to grow your company, and you wanted to boost your sales, what would be some of the areas that you would, say focus on?
Well, I guess it depends on what stage you're at, and where things are going. I mean, if you're trying to get your first 10 companies, it's different than trying to grow from 15 to 25 million, right?
Right, of course.
Um, I think in general, everyone needs to be focused and focus on their ideal customer profile, and really figure out where you can get meaningful traction in the fastest, easiest way. I think everyone should it's always worth rethinking that. Because it's depending on your industry, a lot of times you can sell stuff to lots of people, but it really sells fast to the right people. The right people see it and they're like, oh, holy cow, I need that. There's a ton of value there. And it's that whenever you can focus on those groups, it's better. So you want to think about, well, where am I getting traction? Where am I getting success? Who am I selling to? What's their sub industry? What is the size of this company? What's the buyer profile? Is there some geographic component here that's important?
Mm.
Is it Canadian trucking companies I'm really kicking butt with? Well, then let's figure out who all those are, and figure out who else has those same types of rules that made them need us.
Yeah, so it's almost like looking at pumpkin plan type stuff, and really diagnosing, where are we getting the most profit, where are we getting the most sales, the most value, and our target avatar,
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
making sure your sales team is aligned around that. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Like really figuring out who that target avatar, who that ideal customer profile is. Are most of the listeners, are they often in a certain industry like technology or something, or
No,
is it
great
really
question.
all over the
It
board?
Yeah, it's really all over. It's a great question. I mean, most of our target, or not target, most of our audience is, leaders, managers, and CEOs between like 1 million to 20 million seems to be where most people are at.
Okay, but in lots of different industries, not in
All
like.
kinds of industries, man. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so I think that advice kind of holds true for most people. And not and all those elements are important. Like, what's the industry? What's the geography? Are there geographies where the cost to acquire customers just doesn't pencil out? Like, for a lot of software
Mm.
companies, for example, it's really hard to go after Europe. It's like our software works there just as well as it works in America, but 10% we get 10% of the sales there that we would get in America, or less. I don't even know, but
Is that right? Interesting.
and it's just it's not as easy a place technology gets adopted more slowly at the enterprise level there, I think, is my only guess as to what's going on. But the cost of acquiring a customer is very high there. And so, marketing there, you'll get a lower yield. Your salespeople will have longer sales cycles, and really the product, a lot of times your price that you would charge in America doesn't pencil out over there, but it's too
Yeah, sure.
expensive then, right? So it's
Right,
it's
right.
it's just a tougher environment, I think. Whereas once something's been around for a while, like I think Salesforce, for example, some company that's been around for 20 years selling software, they'll do better. Like CRMs would be adopted over there, but like newer stuff, maybe it's harder. Anyway, point being, think about what geographies are really working for you. Like for us, Australia, we just sell a ton of software because Australians, they love maps. They take a lot of geography courses when they're in grammar school. I've asked them about this. I'm like, why do you guys buy so much of my stuff? Like literally they buy, like
Yeah.
Australia buys as much as all of Europe. And it's just like,
Wow.
and we're not marketing there either. It's just they're finding us because they love maps. And I asked, why do you guys love maps so much? And they're like, well, we
Yeah.
have a lot of geography classes and stuff when we're growing up. And I think
Uh-huh.
Australians, it's a big country, and
Sure.
they teach
Yeah.
us how to use maps. And so I think we
Right.
think about, we think about things in terms of like maps. And so when we go to solve these problems, we kind of quickly realize this is a problem better solved on a map. And so we want the map, and we know, and so then we go and look for it, and we found you. And I'm like, okay, well, that answers my question. But it makes it so I know that Australia is a good place for us to try to do business, whereas it's a lot harder to sell. Italy's a bigger country with a
Sure.
bigger economy, but
Uh-huh.
it's hard, even just, it's a lot harder to sell software there. So
Yeah, it's very
anyway,
interesting dichotomy.
that sort of thing I think is really important to success, and getting from 1 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 20. And it's hard. It's harder to go after a bunch of different ideal customers at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you can, it's good if you can win in one place and really do well. And that's something that we have to make a lot of trade-offs on, because a lot of people work in the field and our product solves their problems, but we can only really market to one. So we go with field sales, even though, like your whole team at Ecolabs, like they're not really salespeople at all, really. They're doing
Technicians.
they're field technicians, and they need it too. But I'm not sure how they found us, but
Yeah.
that they're not in they're outside of our ICP, but
Sure.
we work with them as well, obviously. So I guess that's knowing where to draw lines and where to focus on, and where you're going to get a good, CAC to LTV, cost of acquiring a customer to the lifetime value of that customer ratio. No, thinking about that and really spending your money where you're going to get the highest return, I think is really, a key to being to success, as well as identifying who the high value customers are, right? Like
Right.
some mini profiles, like this type of company in this industry, they're just going to be they're going to have the best retention rate. They're going to the shortest sales cycle. They're going to be the easiest to upsell to. And, over time, those high value customers often make up the majority of your revenue anyway. So, but it's good to go after them first.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely resonate with all that. As when I was sales manager back at Ecolab Nalco, that was, you'd have a few sales reps that were just not really aligning with the core. So we could get one client and probably put as much work into. It takes about as much work to sell a large client as a smaller client, maybe a little bit more, maybe but the revenue is 5, 6, 7 times as much, and so. Really aligning that force and doing training, getting your guys, the best guys on your team to help the guys who were maybe guys or gals who were maybe not optimized, get them in that direction. So we had talked before about, how as a sales manager too, some things that as a CEO, things that you can do to help your sales management team even be more effective and drive sales. Would you like to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing you can do as a CEO or a VP of sales, anyone who, depending on the size of your company,
Right. Sure. Yeah.
the CEO is more and more involved in sales, or less and less as you get bigger. But
Absolutely.
even I think it's important to, even at a larger company, that the sales, the leadership, the CEO or whoever's, if you've kind of at some companies you have a CRO kind of taking over the revenue side of the business, because often, if the CEO is more technical in our industry, for example, but whoever's at the top and sitting in the C-suite, and involved in sales, and I think it's best if it's a CEO, really, but they should stay involved to some degree in the sales process, and parachute in to help with deals, give executive air cover. I forget where I heard this story, but it was about Mark Benioff, who, obviously Salesforce is a massive business at this point, but he still shows up at the big important customer meetings, right? Someone talked about running into him in the halls, a customer they were trying to sell something to in Chicago, but it was like a big company. I forget what it is, Boeing or something. And bumping into him in the halls over there, and it's like, yeah, well, he's still that's probably a $20 million a year deal, so he flies in I'm sure he flies private, but he still flew in. But so I think that's one thing that you can do as an executive, is really stay involved in the sales process. I talk to every one of our salespeople once a month, so I'm not involved in their I don't go to their team meetings. I don't go to their, every weekly meeting or every, with their one-on-ones with their manager, but once a month, I have a 15-minute sit down with every single sales rep, just to get
Wow.
a feel for what are the, what deals they have going on, where are they running into problems,
Yeah, sure.
what do they need, how are these deals progressing, how's everything going, like projections, and just covering, really helps me keep my fingers on what's going on in the business where the rubber meets the road, right,
Love,
which is
love
with your
that, man.
sales team.
Yeah, so you're not their boss, you're not their manager, but as the CEO, you're taking 15 minutes a month just to have that touch point and just to let them know that it's still high visibility, you're still involved, you're still rooting for them. What can we do to help you be more successful?
Hmm.
And
And
that probably
I'm,
means a lot to them.
yeah, and I'm also trying to enable them, right? It's figuring out, oh, what we could really use a resource like this to talk about this competitor and how we compare that with them, or this type of analysis. And then I can go to the
Mm,
marketing team and say, hey, we need this for these guys. Can you guys put together something like that?
yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. And in the last one you had said, specifically around sales, which I would love to know as a CEO is how you clone your best reps, man. That stuck out to me. So I'd love to hear, ready, set, go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually give a whole talk on how to clone your best reps, but it's
Okay.
that to bring it down to its essence,
Yeah.
you identify who's good at what in your organization, like on your sales team specifically in this case, and write down all the things that you would want to be successful at your company as a
Yeah, sure.
salesperson. What are the skills that you would need? Like maybe your company, it's really important that they're able to generate new business and like do prospecting well. Maybe it's a super competitive industry
Mm,
and not everyone's the best fit for you, and so
right.
qualification is really important, or maybe
Mm,
negotiation is really important because it's a highly negotiable product in terms of what it costs. Anyway, you write down the brainstorm with the VP of sales and some top salespeople on the team, like what does it really take to be great in sales at this company, and then you write that, you plop that across the top of an Excel spreadsheet, like each characteristic, like negotiating on this, in this nature, qualifying deals like this, and then write all your sales reps names down the left hand side of the sheet,
hmm.
and rank all your sales reps by on their skills in all these different areas, right? And you can ask around if you don't know. I mean, as a sales manager, you should really kind of know, but like sometimes you're going to have to ask
Yeah.
around. You could
Yeah.
even throw together a quick Google survey and be
Sure.
like, hey, you know, click who the three guys or girls are at the company that you think are really great at this
Yeah.
skill, and do it for each of the 10 or 20 skills that you came up with. Bottom line, identify who's great at what. You can send that survey around to the salespeople, figure it out, figure out who's good at what, and then put them under a microscope and like try to learn what is it about Jessica that makes her so great at negotiation, closing deals for, without giving up a lot of margin. How why does she have better margins on her sales than everybody else? What is she doing? Is it something she's doing early on? Is it establishing value really well? Is it, she just has a winning personality in negotiations? What is it that is
Yeah.
making her successful here? Figure it out, and then have her teach everyone else in the organization how she does that skill, like enable her to take a leadership role on that specific skill, and put together a presentation, and it can preferably hands-on for most things in sales, where she actually like shows them how she does it and they get to practice it. But make her in charge of teaching that thing that she's great at, and people often respond really well to learning from their peers because they know this person's really good at it, and it's
Yeah.
where the rubber
Yeah.
meets the road. It's
Person's
different
respected.
than, exactly, yeah. So it's a great way to really up level everyone's skills, but for very specifically for you, the skills that are important for your company and the skills found somewhere in the team. And you may find, wow, nobody's good at this one thing, but it really would be great if we were. And that's a great time to, go out to the market and hire an expert who, there's if it's negotiation that you're having troubles with,
Yeah.
there's people that are experts in negotiation training. You can
Gotcha.
hire them to come in and they can make the team better at it.
Gotcha. No, man, what a great concept, right? It's almost like you're putting an engineering approach really to figuring out the skill sets of your team and then how to duplicate it. And really, I mean, you could almost take this to any position within your company where you have multiple people and apply it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Anytime you have, this certainly works for engineering teams. It's certainly, any team where there's a bunch of people doing kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Yeah, man. Awesome. So, a couple softball questions just to see provide some value for folks. What do you think is the biggest failure that you had in your journey as CEO at Badger that you learned
um,
from?
that's one of your softballs.
Or- or-
I think I think one of the more challenging things, really understanding debt and equity, and
okay.
not spinning my wheels, but like figuring out what to what's the best fit for us, who are the best providers. There's definitely a bunch of gotchas in this industry that a lot of people learn the hard way. um,
Mm,
but so we're a bootstrap company. Figuring out the debt market was certainly challenging. The debt market for software companies is
yeah.
a little different than if
Very
you're.
complex.
Yeah, it's tricky because you're not dealing with regular players in the debt market
Mm,
because we don't actually have collateral, right? If you're in the real estate, if you're looking for a piece of real estate debt, you've got collateral. I mean, I don't have anything. I've got some mice and some microphones and some
yeah. There's no
computers, but
assets for, yeah.
yeah. And so figuring out like
Mhm.
a traditional like bank provider, for example, wouldn't work. But I've probably raised like 6 million in debt over the last 10 years.
Mhm.
um and there's a bunch of gotchas and things that I've learned along the way. So like
Yeah.
debt with short payback periods can be dangerous. If you get if a piece of debt that's a year long, and then you spend the money, and uh then with the expectation that they're going to keep renewing the debt with you,
Mm,
um, because a lot of debt facilities are kind of regularly renewing.
mm,
But if the economy hits the skids, which we don't control that, they can lock up, right?
mhm,
or
mhm.
or really raise their rates, et cetera. But if you go to them and you're like, okay, I'm ready for my annual injection of $2 million, and they're like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, we can only give you 500,000 this year. You're like, well, but I pay back the existing debt with other debt. I use this as a rolling facility, and they're like, but
Mhm.
it's not. It's an annual facility that we were
Mhm.
renewing. That's different.
Mhm.
So that's a
Wow.
gotcha. I think there's a
Yeah.
bunch of covenants that can get tricky, restricting the business in different ways, making you keep a certain amount of liquidity, money in the bank, basically. Like if someone's going to loan you $1 million, but you got to keep $500,000 in the bank, they've really loaned you $500,000, but you're just paying for $1 million. Um, minimum covenants around EBITDA or MRR that, if you don't keep, they can jack up the rates or demand that you pay back faster, things like that.
So very
It,
complex, yeah. Playing field.
and yeah, and complexity, I think, is another issue. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of BS in fintech and lending. Figuring out that people present loans in many different ways, and really a loan is like, you think about a loan on a house, right? There's a
Mm.
term on a house.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
this is a 30-year 4% mortgage, right?
Yeah.
Really, all debt, you could boil down to that. You can boil it down to an APR. But a lot of times you'll go to get business loans because it's not a really regulated space. Like consumers are very protected, at
Sure.
least in
Sure.
America.
Business not
Or
so much. Yeah.
businesses, it's not really a regulated industry to a large degree. They can charge a ton, they can have a ton of hidden fees, they can,
Yeah.
and they can present the loan in a lot of ways where you're like, wait, that's not, if it's not the same as a home loan, then something you can convert it to that. It's just, it takes a little math.
Mm,
Um, penalties and prepayments and prepayment fees, and things that make it so you can't recap them, like bring in another lender to pay them off and bring in someone else if someone else has a better loan. Things like that are all things to watch out for. So I think those are some key challenges, failures,
sure.
and
Yeah.
otherwise hard learned lessons that I've seen
Yeah.
over the years is
Did you
how,
hire oh, sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just gonna ask, did you
no,
like bring on a professional to help you in this area, like a consultant to help you navigate this?
no, but
Interesting.
you could definitely do that. I kind of figured it out over the years,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, I think that there is, you can certainly, there are certainly CFOs for, I mean, when you're a smaller company, you don't have, when I was first doing this, you don't have,
You don't have access to it.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have a CFO in your team. You don't have a,
Yeah. For sure.
director of finance. You don't have anyone doing finance. So maybe you have a bookkeeper that'll do this. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, if
Totally.
you're at a larger company, a CFO would do this, or a VP finance, or someone like that. But, and they're probably versed in a lot of this stuff already.
Yeah.
Now, in our industry, it's the industry's really matured over the last few years, and so there's lenders now that that have really made this a lot easier and taken a lot of the complexity out of it. We use a company called Founder Path for that.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. So, a question for you. So, we're getting towards the end of our time together. A question I always like to ask, Stephen, is if you're going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what is the one book that you would require he or she read before taking over for you?
Hmm. What a pleasant and yet difficult concept. No, yeah, it's definitely tough to pass the reins on something like this. I
Of
mean,
course.
and I think depending on the person, right? A lot of times people start companies, but then they were the right person to get it out of the gates and get it going, but they're probably not the right person to run it once it's at scale. Um, but
Yeah.
but maybe Impossible to Inevitable by Jason Lemkin. I mean,
Okay.
that's obviously very focused on the software industry, but
Right.
that's an important one, I think.
For the
That
high
cut,
tech CEO.
yeah, that covers
Yeah.
a lot of things for
Okay.
specifically if you're
Awesome.
in software. I think
Yeah.
that's the one that I'd want to make sure we could discuss what was on page 83.
Uh, well, cool. I'm sure there's going to be some high tech or software CEO that's going to thank you for referring that book to him. So yeah, definitely. Well, Steve, it was awesome having you on the show, man. You covered so many just great nuggets. I mean, we talked about the importance of market research, your value proposition, not just when you start the company, but making sure you don't go off course as you grow, your ideal customer target profile, your geographies, as a CEO, the importance of keeping that thumb on your sales reps and parachuting in for the big deals. And you know what, my favorite was cloning your best reps. I think that's something that right away every sales manager, every CEO, VP of sales can take and instantly put into place. We didn't even get into psychometric stuff, but yeah, that is awesome. And understanding debt to equity, just great stuff there. um if there was one takeaway that you would really want the audience to absorb, Steve, what would that be?
From what we've talked about today, um, yeah, be careful with debt, but also be really careful with equity.
True, right?
um,
It can be just as
let's
dangerous.
just as dangerous, if not more. More really, it's really more. But one takeaway, I think if I were going to give someone a takeaway and they were, a CEO, the advice that I really could have used was more, focusing on your ideal customer, figuring out who that is, really understanding them, really getting inside of their
Mm,
head,
yeah.
knowing their business back and forth, and then just finding a bunch of people like them that you also solve the same problem is a really, really valuable thing. And it's just, there are certain paths that have a much, it's a much easier path. It's like,
Mhm.
you can do this the hard way or the easy way. And it's always better to do it the easy way.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a great takeaway. And Steve, if any of our listeners wanted to reach out and get a hold of you, either to use Badger Mapping in their company for sales or for any questions regarding your CEO experience, how would they do that?
Well, if they're interested in Badger Maps and want to learn about that, I would definitely say just go to the website and check it out, learn more about it. We've got a free trial. We've got, all the resources there to kind of see all the things that it does and all the ways it creates value. If
And
you're
what is
looking
the
for
website?
badgermapping.com.
Awesome.
Um, and then if you're looking for me, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find
Cool.
me. Just look up Steve Benson, Badger Maps. I'll pop right up. But that's although LinkedIn has become a mountain of work to keep on top of, I do keep on top of it.
It is. There's hopefully someday they're gonna, upgrade the messaging capabilities in there.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be pretty easy to do that, but
I know I'm a little surprised, right, with the direction the company's going. So, but again, hey, Steve, thanks again for being on the show, and for listeners, please hit like and subscribe, and help us spread the word about the show and what we're doing here. Again, the goal is to help up and coming leaders and managers and CEOs bypass the learning curves, accelerate profits, and just create that high performance organization. With that, this is Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks a lot.